Welcome to Off Deadline. I'm Melissa Dijon-Filippo, and my guest today is Greg Barr, Editor-in-Chief of the Phoenix Business Journal. Welcome, Greg.
Glad to be here.
Greg Barr brings 40 years of experience as a journalist to us. Greg has been Editor-in-Chief of the Phoenix Business Journal since 2018, responsible for the overall editorial vision and content of the publication. He previously held writing and editing positions at the Austin Business Journal and Houston Business Journal. A native of Canada, he worked at several newspapers there before moving to the U.S., including as an investigative reporter with the Financial Times of Canada and as a writer and editor with the Ottawa Citizen, one of Canada's largest dailies. I'm so happy that you took the time today.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Those will be fun.
Well, we're going deep today, okay? So I want to start first to understand why journalism and how did you get your first big break?
Okay, well, interesting question because it wasn't like I early on decided this is what I'm going to do. I kind of fell into it really. I was a creative person. I knew that. I was a musician since I was a little kid, piano lessons ordered by my grandmother. Yeah. And then I moved into rock bands when I was 12 years old.
Wow. And
so I was really creative. I had that half of my brain. And so then when I went to graduate, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And I ended up going into science of all these things. And, I don't know how I ended up there, but I thought, well, let's try that. It didn't work out very well.
Science, like you were trying to be a scientist?
Biology, okay. I was just thinking, I don't know. A high school teacher I had in biology, I thought he was a really cool person, and I thought, well, maybe I can do that. I really didn't know, but I knew I was playing in the band in the background, and so that was always something interesting for me. But it didn't work out, so I had a couple of years of in university just not happy.
Yeah.
And one day I ended up seeing a job ad to go work on the college radio station.
Oh, okay.
So I got somehow, with no experience in doing it or whatever, I'm like, suddenly there I'm able to spin records in the middle of the night and thought this is kind of interesting. Yeah. And then, I could get a job doing this.
I love it.
So I enrolled in journalism, and actually it was in radio and television journalism, broadcasting. It wasn't print.
Okay.
So then I totally segued, and the light bulbs went off, and I'm writing, I'm editing, I'm doing all of these things that were apparently it was
a skill set
part of my life that was unleashed,
Yeah.
So that was great. But then even back then, when I graduated, it was tough to get a job, and so what am I going to do? Well, I took a job, just any job. And then went back to school at night to take other journalism courses, And then my break came because of my rock band.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I was playing in this rock band in this little town near Ottawa, the capital of Canada, about 40 miles away in a small town. And, you just get around it. Oh, what do you do for a living? So the drummer says, I'm the photographer for the little paper here in town. And I went, do you have any job openings? He said, yeah, we need a sports writer. Huh. And I got the job the next day.
That's amazing. So your band, your hobby, got you your career.
Yeah, basically.
That's so cool.
And then, so I never ended up going back into TV or radio. I stayed in print the whole way from that minute forward.
Wow. Was there any regrets there?
No, not really,
okay, yeah.
Because again, it was all creativity, of course. And at the time when I got the job, I loved sports. I loved writing about sports. I was into every single sport possible, although I spent most of my time in freezing cold high school hockey rinks.
Yeah, that's a Canada thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Now it's an all over thing. I get it, but for me growing up here, it wasn't a big thing here until it was.
Yeah, for sure. So that was anyway. But that's the weird connection I have. It was actually through the band that I got my first job.
Wow, so cool. So I want to know, what was your I can't believe they're paying me to do this moment that confirmed you had chosen the right profession?
Sure. Well, let's stay with the music vein. I've had the most fortunate thing I've had in my career is being able to do so many different kinds of jobs within the industry and have so many different beats to cover. Editor, writer, you imagine, I've pretty much done everything you could do in a newsroom over my career, which has been great.
Yeah.
At one point, I was a full-time rock music critic.
Oh, how perfect.
And so one of those, I can't pay, you can't believe you're getting paid for this. So yeah, I was working in Ottawa. And back in the days, there was a long time in journalism in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of unlimited budgets. People had a lot of money in publishing and whatever. So
because people were spending a lot in advertising because there wasn't the internet.
Right. You could go, so there was a lot of money for travel for journalists and things going on. So they paid for me to fly from Ottawa to Philadelphia to cover the opening night of the Steel Wheels Rolling Stones tour.
Wow.
And so that was one of those moments.
That is so cool to say that you not only were there, but you also covered that as your job.
Yeah. And then I could tell you, there's a funny, weird story attached to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so, this is it. Veterans Stadium is, I think they blew that up and built another one later, but that was the big stadium then. And of course, so the concert was amazing. I remember they blew the power in the middle of the first song, like the whole place went black.
Wow.
Just out. And then 5 minutes of people screaming, and then the power came on and they finished the song. And then off they went. But at the end of the show, so I was, again, I had this computer, supposed computer back then, this Radio Shack computer, and it was like, there was one screen of type, you didn't know what you were writing, and it just took forever, But anyway, I did all that. So by the time I finished, it was really late by the time I had filed everything. And so I left Veterans Stadium. I had no idea where I was, what I was doing. This was, Uber didn't exist.
Yeah, and you didn't live there.
Uber didn't exist, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm figuring out, I got to figure out where I'm going. And I walked around, all the way around the stadium, and I saw the big Rolling Stones, the trucks, with the tongue on the side and the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I saw a couple of people, so I walked over there, and this woman jumped out of one of the cabs of the 18-wheelers. And I said, I'm trying to get to, do you have any idea where the Constellation Hotel is? She said, we're staying there, I'll drive you.
You got on the tour bus?
So, no, the truck with all their equipment.
How cool.
So anyway, I'm on the truck, and she went through every red light, pulling her big, giant, blasting diesel horns, back to the hotel.
At 1 in the morning?
There you go, at 1 in the morning.
What a cool story.
So there you go.
I love that. That is it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. What reporting experience brought you the most pure joy or satisfaction of your career so far?
Well, there's a lot. One of the most interesting and fulfilling ones was in Canada, again, sports this time. There was, everybody knows the Harlem Globetrotters.
Of course.
There was, in Canada, at one point, there was a hockey team made up of Roman Catholic priests. And they were called the Flying Fathers.
This sounds like the start of a joke.
No, it's not.
That's crazy.
It's not.
I love this. Okay.
Yeah, but they would go from town to town, and some bigger cities too, but they would go and play a charity hockey game against maybe the police and firemen of the town, and that kind of thing, and raise money for a specific cause and charity in that town, and then move on to the next town, and whatever they would do. And they were a really pretty loose group of people, that these priests that got together to play.
Yeah.
A couple of Americans actually were in there too.
Wow.
But I got a chance I got an assignment with the same paper that flew me to the Stones, to travel with these priests for about 8 days on their bus, going to 2 or 3 really small towns on the east coast of Canada. And it was just an amazing experience. And, just to be involved, to see, what they meant to these small towns and what they meant to the kids and what they meant, and then some of the unprintable antics that the things that I saw that you wouldn't expect to see.
Are they really priests?
Yeah,
is that really
exactly.
happening right now?
Yeah, there were some poker games, I can tell you
Oh,
about.
I love it. That is so funny. And how, what a unique experience to just, be able to be in that inner circle for a minute, I'm sure.
Yeah, and, but it was just, these people were they were doing a great thing.
Of course,
and then it kind of, it rubs off on you and you're part of it. And so that always stuck with me.
Very cool. What assignment revealed something about humanity or society that might have altered your worldview in some way?
It was a lot to draw on, which I'm fortunate to be able to say.
Yeah.
Let's move from Canada now to Texas.
Okay.
I had moved to Canada, to Texas, of all places, and I ended up working for the Houston Business Journal. That was how I got into the Business Journal world. But before that, I did a lot of freelancing, and I actually ended up doing stuff for Canadian papers who are Canada's, is fascinated with Texas.
Wow.
And, anything, the Wild West.
Yeah.
Just sort of the vibe.
Yep.
And a lot of wild things happen in Texas to cover, politically, in business. There's just a lot of stuff. I'll try and make this as clear as possible to explain the profound impact that this had. I knew there was an attorney in Galveston, Texas, which is an island off the coast of Texas. A lot of people don't really know that it's an island.
Yeah.
Anyway, he lived in this small town. He was a black attorney, Anthony Griffin. And turned out that he was given a pro bono job, through one of the organizations that sets those things up. And his client that he was going to represent was a grand wizard of the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh my God. Wow. And he's a black attorney.
Yes.
In Texas.
In Texas.
Okay.
So I got to go interview the Klan guy about the experience. I knew Anthony anyway.
Yeah.
So I went to East Texas, a place called Orange. Very Klan heavy kind of place.
Wow.
And
what year was this approximately?
This was in the mid 90s.
Okay.
I just remember so this guy, he represented him it was a tax evasion case back in the FBI, all the dealings with the Klan, the way they ended up usually busting people like that was over something like tax evasion. That was kind of the main way they could try and get at these people.
Yeah.
So sat down with the guy. He had his suit and tie on. He was coming out of the courtroom, and basically he just described, his jaw dropped when he turned the corner to meet his new attorney.
I'm sure.
But in the end, it taught me a lot about humanity and things. And the attorney got him off the charges. He defended him. That was it was ACLU.
Wow.
So he defended him and got him off.
Wow. That is there are so many factors of that story that are so bonkers.
Yeah. So you could say with someone with the Klan, humanity at its worst, but then humanity at its best with what the attorney did to put things aside and do what he did.
Yeah, that's very, very impressive. And what a unique experience.
Yeah.
I've never heard a story like that.
Yeah. So, that was, very, very profound.
Yeah. Can you share a time when your most impactful work happened behind the scenes in ways that your audience never even knew?
Even now, there's a lot of stuff that goes on can be tedious, and you're digging through, especially in business now. We have to dig through so many documents all the time that people they see the story, they don't know how long it takes to weed through things and find things like that. So to be able to find a kernel of something that turns into a bigger story, that's kind of like the payoff thing, and and you see that, I see that through the eyes of the reporters who work for me now. I don't think there's one specific thing, but I wanted to try and say that the amount of tedium involved in looking through these things can end up with an amazing payoff at the end.
Yeah, and a lot of times, I was talking with another reporter recently who said those best stories are exactly that. It's like digging into paperwork and seeing something that no one else has seen yet,
right?
And being the first to bring it to light. It takes a lot of work and time.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's it's a rewarding thing. I mean, I've worked in business a long time, done all the other things too with music and covering crime and all of those things, but looking through public documents, can be a treasure trove, really, if you want, and if you take that attitude, then it opens the doors to really be, looking and not like, oh my gosh, I got another 10,000 documents to read.
It's like searching for gold. Really.
It's like there's something there. There's going to be something there, so keep going.
Yeah, I love that. Is there a story or a moment from your career that still weighs on you or keeps you up at night?
I don't think really weighs on me. There's been some tough times. I've had, I was involved in a court case at one time where, you have your notes subpoenaed, and it was a case with a publicly traded company, and they brought the case against the newspaper. I was able to get through that, but that kept me up at night.
Yeah,
that whole
scary.
2-week experience, that was, really difficult. In the end, I felt vindicated because as a result of that, I was allowed access to the CEO and other people. I got to fly back to their headquarters and do follow-up interviews, and was able to write a bigger story that just went into a lot of issues with their finances and whatever that came to light. But of course, at that point, there was nothing. It was all completely provable stuff. So there was nothing, no issues after that was resolved.
Yeah. Wow. But like that feeling of, even though you knew you didn't do anything wrong, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That feeling of like, what could this result in must be pretty scary.
Yeah. Well, it was. Yeah. Again, you, as a journalist, you're always,
someone doesn't like you at all times.
You're always worried about, you always got to be very vigilant. And this is what I do now as the editor. We have to be very vigilant on how we cover anything to do that has a legal edge to it.
Yeah.
Citing documents is great. That gives you a lot of protection from libel. Citing court documents,
Absolutely.
Actual pieces of paper. I've seen some, publications get into trouble when they're talking about things and they don't have the real paper trail to back it up.
Yeah.
That's when
there's a real issue.
You have to be really, really, really careful with that kind of thing.
Yeah, and especially with a publicly traded company. Any company, I'm sure, but they have the money and they will, right?
Sure.
They'll pursue. What unconventional path or experience in your life has unexpectedly made you a better journalist?
Well, I think the fact that I ended up falling into it because of my band.
Yeah.
For years, I played in bands and worked as a journalist. Mm-hmm. And at one point, oh my God, I had to decide. At one point, I was covering sports, and what do you do at sports? Well, you cover games. And
Late
when are
nights.
the games? They're at night.
Yep.
And when do you play in a band? Well, you play a band late at night. So they were clashing at one point, and at one point, I had to make the horrific decision of quitting the band. Because it was bringing in some money, but it wasn't my main thing. So I picked it up again and figured, I got to balance this out. I got to play I got to play music. Yeah. But I always think that that's kind of been, been part of it's those two things together. Playing music and writing has always been something that's been in sync for me and has been part of my mojo.
That's awesome, and it really has been something that's helped you get your start in journalism, and that you've kind of carried along the way. And you still play music today, don't you?
Yeah, I haven't played as much since I moved to Phoenix. I was playing a lot when I was in Texas. I played in a couple of bands that played big venues like House of Blues.
Oh,
and,
how cool.
That's
awesome.
were doing really well. But then when I moved here, I've played in done a couple of things, played a few gigs last year. I still like to get out and go to an open mic and play stuff.
Cool.
But yeah, just when as my job is just so very hectic and busy right now, I'm not doing a full-time other music thing, but
someday.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Someday.
I love that you can keep your hobby, and like it's been such a big part of your whole life, and you still make time for it. I think that's so important for everyone.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
It probably makes you more creative, honestly.
Well, as I say, I think you're constantly using that, creativity, and they're different. It's slightly different things, but it still comes from the same.
Same muscle.
But I love. But it's what it is. It's kind of like if people play golf and they kind of get in a zone, and you when you're playing golf, you're just concentrating on that, and you're thinking, and and it's a feeling of it. When I'm playing music, it's like everything else shuts off.
Yeah. So you can just be in the moment.
Yeah, I'm in the moment, and I'm doing that.
That's great.
And that's a good thing to do.
Oh yeah. Okay, we're in rapid fire. Okay, so your job is to just say the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay. What's the most outrageous behavior you've witnessed from a celebrity, a politician, a public figure in your reporting?
Okay, rapid fire. Well, when I was the rock critic, all those quite a few years, I saw a lot of outrageous behavior.
I'm sure.
I can say that I got punched by a high-profile singer who had a #1 Billboard hit backstage at a concert because she didn't like something I wrote about her.
Wow, I don't think many people can say that.
So,
did you retaliate?
No, but in the end, she faced big issues with being busted for cocaine use.
Okay, well then.
So there you go.
It comes around.
The karma.
Yep, karma comes around.
There you go.
Most outrageous excuse you've ever used to get access to a story?
I don't know if excuse. One thing that does come to mind when you say that, though, is I did master the art of reading upside down.
Oh.
And got a story one time when I was interviewing an executive, and the papers on his desk, I was able to read them, and gave me a big clue on a story that I was able to follow up on.
Amazing! What a skill. A story you cover you're the editor, but I guess if your publisher said unlimited budget, go wild.
Yeah, well, let's to bring it into perspective with what I do at the Business Journal.
Yeah.
I think something that would be really with a no budgetary constraints.
Yeah, no constraints.
Because we write a lot about Arizona and the Valley's competitiveness against other states and other businesses. For relocation, we're always trying to attract companies here.
Yep.
We have, our arch enemy city like Dallas is the one that Phoenix is always going up against for business relocation.
Yeah.
I think if we had unlimited budget, it would be great to go to do a series to go to each one of those cities and pick them apart in terms of what they do and be able to show everyone how this competitive thing works across the country. That would be if I could go to 8 different cities and do that would be good.
I love it. Great idea. We're gonna pitch that to someone, to your publisher, or maybe to the Business Journal network.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we do keep tabs with some of the stuff, because we're part of American City Business Journals, and we're in 46 cities.
Yeah.
So we do work with other reporters in other cities when we see similar things, or people are bidding on the same project, or comparing some stuff with other cities. We are able to do that.
Yeah.
But I want to do it all in person.
Yeah, I agree. I love it. If I weren't a journalist, I'd be
full-time musician.
I knew you were going to say that. It's almost too easy of a question.
Yeah, I know.
And finally, what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone just starting in journalism today?
Well, I would say, it's there was a time period where it was, the gloomiest thing in the world was to be, oh, you mean you want to be a journalist? Are you crazy? I think, there's so much local, so much news and powerful news that comes out of local publications that are focused just on their own niche market.
Yep.
I think that's the power of journalism, and power of local journalism is still very, very important. And I see that, we talk to the interns that come through. We have one in our newsroom now. We have another one starting. We'll have our second one starting on Monday. And, there's a lot to do in journalism still. There's a lot of good work to do to keep powerful people honest, and just and business news is one of those things that's never going to go away.
Yeah.
So I think it's still a good time to be in journalism, no matter what was said a few years ago. I think after the internet came in and changed so much upside down, then people
got a little jaded about
how do I have a path forward in this?
Yeah.
But there are paths forward. And it's good to see so many people still enrolling in journalism and wanting to do journalism. That hasn't stopped.
Yeah, that's great. So a positive message, still a great career path.
Yes.
Good, I love it. Thank you so much for being here, Greg. It was a pleasure.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Of course.